thank you so much for joining us. Big thank you also to Claire Pearsall, former Conservative Government Advisor. She worked in the Home Office. Boo! Is with us, but she was one of the same ones trying to get stuff done. We like her. Honestly, we do. Anyway, she's with me all the way till 1 o'clock. Coming up in this hour, a man jailed for life for murder saw his conviction quashed at the appeal court yesterday after fresh testing of samples at the crime scene found a DNA profile that exonerated him and pointed to an unknown attacker. Peter Sullivan spent 38 years behind bars. He's described the pain of being stripped of his youth, but says he's not bitter. How? After being jailed for life at the age of 30 for the murder of Diane Sindel. He is believed to be the UK's longest-serving victim of a miscarriage of justice. We'll be talking about that in this hour. Plus, under government plans to tackle the overcrowding crisis, prisoners will be released from jail as little as a third of the way through their sentences if they behave well. Don't stab anyone, throw boiling water or boiling oil on them, and you basically serve a third of your sentence. Why do we even bother? Let's not even bother arresting people anymore. It's an absolute waste of time. Meanwhile, President Trump on his trip to the Middle East has hailed a golden age for the Middle East as he urged nations in the region to abandon conflict and embrace prosperity in partnership with the US. No doubt also with the Trump organisation building towers and hotels. He said this was led by the example of his hosts in Saudi Arabia. Again, everyone's still pretending the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia is a reformist and a modernist, when in fact he's a murderous dictator. The US president will go to meet another murderous dictator. He'll be meeting with the new leader of Syria. That's Ahmed al-Shara, the former al-Qaeda member and militant Islamist who has taken over from Bashar al-Assad in Syria. We are in very strange territory because President Trump really doesn't seem to know what is and what is not a murderous dictator. He's very, very confused and seems to think Zelensky is one when he's pretty much the only person he's dealt with who isn't. It's not that Mark Carney, the Canadian Prime Minister, but it's quite bizarre. Claire, before we talk, it's got lots of things to talk about, but in terms of Donald Trump over in the Middle East, talk of him possibly going to Turkey, to Istanbul, where there is going to be apparently possibility of peace talks going on. Zelensky is going to fly tomorrow from Ukraine to Istanbul, and basically, I'm guessing, sitting in an empty room with another spare chair. Maybe they'll get a big white table, so it'll be something that Vladimir Putin will feel comfortable with. And basically, I'm going to wait for Vladimir Putin to come. We don't know if he's going to come or not, but we've got an awful lot on President Trump's plate as the man who's the most powerful man in the world and governing the world's policeman. But Ukraine, Middle East, do you think he's got his priorities right?
Yes, I do in this respect. Now, I'm not always in favour of everything that Donald Trump does, but I do think in this it does help the US. If you sort out situations, wars in the Middle East, war in Ukraine, it does help the American economy, and obviously on the world stage it helps out the rest of us too. Interesting that he is there front and centre in Riyadh. He is talking to Zelensky, he is probably talking to Putin should he turn up, and he's talking to Ahmed al-Shara, the Syrian leader. We're not.
Yeah.
Where is our Prime Minister in all of this? So actually, I think that Donald Trump is doing
busy selling out to the EU.
Yeah. Which looks like an irrelevant...
We're busy smashing the gangs, Claire.
Yeah, because that's worked really, really well. How many did we have this weekend that came in by boat? Quite a few.
500. I think we have 200 while Keir Starmer was speaking.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's not working out so well. So at the moment, I would suggest that Donald Trump has done more in his 100-odd days than Keir Starmer could ever dream of.
That is interesting. I wonder if we will see, any move to, cease war in Gaza or indeed in Ukraine. It's very interesting that Donald Trump is not going to visit Israel, despite, we understand, requests from Netanyahu. And the bromance between Netanyahu and Trump was the thing. There was no love lost between Biden and Netanyahu. And yet, it is quite bizarre that he's chosen not to visit in this time. Let's talk about, how this may or may not link to where we are right now with this investigation into arson attacks on not just the current Prime Minister's home, family home he lived before he moved into number 10, a former flat he owned in the 90s, and a car he used to own. All three attacked over a period of days. A 21-year-old man has been arrested as a suspect in those arson attacks, being questioned by the counter-terrorism police since the early hours of Tuesday morning. We haven't got any developments on that yet. All we do know, though, is that counter-terror police are looking at the possibility that a hostile state may be behind the arson attacks. Now, you'd think then China, Russia, Iran, Anyone else?
There's probably quite a few that we could lump into that.
Well, I got a bit of trouble for a tweet I posted.
I
about
did see
70
your
million.
tweet.
The police have narrowed it down to 70 million suspects. By the way, I'd already established that no one had been harmed at that point. I don't take it back. I think political satire is always allowed, even at grave times.
Some people did get extremely angry.
Well, apparently lawyers are reporting me to the police.
Really?
I mean, I make a terrible cup of tea, but you're welcome to turn up.
They might have news of your stolen handbag at the same time if they pop out.
No, that man's being charged. I finally found out after it took about 8 months, but he's finally being charged after I gave them all the evidence on the third day.
Well, you should have said that he was from a hostile state. I mean, I don't buy it. This just feels to me that this is one individual with a grudge, might be backed up by some pretty extreme people behind them, but I don't feel that this is organised enough to be a sort of Russian attack. If you look at what happened to Litvinenko, what happened with Salisbury poisonings, way more thought had gone into
and
those.
Andrew Fox was pointing out people often work as teams when they come from hostile states.
Not just on your own.
But it's interesting that even after 24 hours of questioning this suspect, bearing in mind he's a suspect, he's not been charged with any crimes, certainly not convicted of any crime. We don't know any details about the man, or even whether or not he is British or a foreigner. That the concerns about it. That said, we have had the arrest of 5 Iranians. One of whom found in an asylum seeker hotel or hostel. I mean, with allegations of a terror attack there. I mean, the plot is thickening on this front. The plot is certainly thickening. Let's talk about the Sadiq Khan leading the sort of passive-aggressive backlash from the, I suppose you say, moderate wing of Labour of the Prime Minister's speech on Monday. He's been accused by the left, John McDonnell and others, of being like, Enoch Powell, using that phrase, that we'd become an island of strangers, but due to mass immigration if we don't do something about it. Sadiq Khan, the London Mayor, says it's not language he would use. But he also went on, and we discussed this a bit earlier, but he went on to make this bizarre claim that migrants have built London. Not true. We have a hugely large migrant population, but no, London was London before we had mass migration to this country, and certainly to into London. It's an absolute abject nonsense. But he also said that the average migrants on average contribute more to this country than Brits do, using completely spurious stats, which basically don't include the cost for migrants of the fact that if you're not born here and you come in your 20s or 30s, we've not had to pay to educate you, or the NHS care when you're born. And when you're born and when you die is when you cost the NHS the most, and education's a big cost. But if you're not having those, but if they stay here, they get pensions and they're allowed to benefits, and they have kids who go to school and things like that, they will be a cost. Those figures are just utterly nonsense. But it's not unusual for Sadiq Khan to just make up numbers, is it?
No, it really isn't. I mean, he claimed that pretty much everybody in London, and indeed Greater London bordering into Kent, was suffering from air pollution sickness and asthma rates.
Something like 30,000 people die every year as a result of pollution. Completely untrue.
No, he just wanted to charge more money to drive into London, because that's what he can do.
But he pointed out that air got cleaner. Air got cleaner before ULEZ, bigger zones or smaller zones. And by the way,
cars are more efficient.
The figures he gave, they're from I think a BMA document, but actually it was an extrapolation, and they used extrapolation, and so did the media when they reported it. It's basically the equivalent of 30,000 lives. So basically, millions and millions of people might, from living in a city or living anywhere in the modern world and having things like electricity and cars and trains and planes and refrigerators and hospitals and all of those things, they might live basically a week or two less than they might otherwise have lived, apart from the fact that those things are the things that keep us alive and make life worthwhile.
Exactly.
Would you give up your fridge and all public transport and hospital treatment in return for an extra 2 weeks? I don't think you would, guys.
Not really.
So again, this stuff is all political nonsense.
Of course it is. And he has form with this. But it is quite interesting that Keir Starmer has managed to irritate absolutely everybody.
Yeah.
With
it's
one
fun, though, isn't it?
Monday morning sermon. And I watched it. I am that person.
Did you manage to? We didn't. We played a clip and it was about 40 seconds long, and I genuinely had to sort of wake up everyone afterwards. Come on.
There were a lot of swear words, which is the topic of the morning, but there were a lot of swear words in my household.
Just tuned in, one of my producers has set up, for no good reason at all, a swear box, and I'm already off air. I'm already quite poor now.
Yes. It's a good job they didn't know about Monday morning when I was in the living room.
I'd love to have seen that. You should do Gogglebox, you watching Keir Starmer speeches.
I was also watching it with the husband, who is obviously a natural supporter of Sir Keir Starmer.
Your husband.
And pointing at him and laughing.
Your husband is Nigel Nelson, who is political editor of a left-wing tabloid.
Indeed.
Who came to a Christmas party I had, to which you were invited, plus ones. I've known Nigel for years.
Yeah.
And what did he wear to the Christmas party? Bearing in mind the sort of people who are likely to be at my Christmas party.
Yeah, a flak jacket.
Literally wore a flak jacket.
It's a top photograph for that one.
I love him for that. Everyone's going, why is he wearing a flak jacket? I went, look at you all. Of course he's wearing a flak jacket.
He was the token lefty in the room. But the speech was just, A, it was dull, B, it said nothing particularly important, interesting and necessary. I don't know why he did it at 8:30 on a Monday morning, and I think the Speaker is absolutely doing his pieces because, again, this was all announced before the House of Commons had time to look at it.
The Speaker's not doing very well in the news, though, because people are constantly criticising him for his freebie this, freebie that, trip there, trip that, taking things.
People will always criticise anybody.
You work for the Deputy Speaker.
Yes.
Does she get freebies?
Not that I know of. She certainly doesn't pass them down to me. Any freebies that you get, especially from visiting dignitaries, you have to register in the correct way. And you can't turn around to an ambassador and say, no, sorry, ambassador,
but
please
you register,
take your
but do you
Ferrero
get
Rocher.
to keep it?
Yes, you do. You have to register it. You have to, you keep it. You can't turn gifts down. You can't turn them away. It's the diplomacy side of life means that you have to accept these things.
OK, just so we know, can we talk about Peter Sullivan? We're going to be talking to a former prisoner himself in a few moments' time. Peter Sullivan, this man who's 68 years old, jailed at the age of 30. Jailed for life for the murder of Diane Sindel, who's beaten to death. Absolutely horrific crime. Basically, he's not guilty. His appeal court quashed his conviction after 38 years behind bars. He's believed to be the longest-serving victim of miscarriage of justice. Follows, of course, the case of Andrew Malkinson, who's cleared of rape in 2023 when DNA identified another suspect. He spent 17 years behind bars. There are going to be miscarriages of justice. Yeah. One of the reasons why I don't agree with the death penalty, because there will be mistakes that are made. We know that technology involving DNA has massively moved on. We also know that juries have been told in the past, and I think still being told now, that DNA evidence is far more, foolproof. Oh, it's 99.99999%. It simply isn't that safe. And if that's the only evidence, that's not necessarily good enough to convict someone, again, beyond reasonable doubt. But once there are question marks about a conviction, we've got the big case at the moment with Lucy Letby. We need our judicial processes to work so much more quickly, do we not? Because our system is based on the principle that it is better for 9 guilty men to walk free than for one to lose his freedom, to falsely be found guilty, and to lose 38 years of your adult life is just beyond awful.
And the wheels of the judiciary just turn incredibly slowly, and that needs to change. And I think successive governments have never quite got the hang of dealing with a judicial system that works for people. If you're talking Peter Sullivan, 38 years for something he didn't do, and he maintained his innocence all of that time, never changed. Why is it that 10 years ago there were questions over how stable this conviction was, and now he's only just been exonerated? And you think, but in that 10 years, why has it taken that long? And I think that has to change. We are looking at the judicial system that doesn't work in any way. In any way. Well, so we'll talk to a former prisoner about that. But again, there were a lot of years when, he did appeal after appeal. He first tried to challenge his conviction in 2008. Diane Sindel was beaten to death in 1986. The Criminal Cases Review Commission declined to refer the case to the Court of Appeal. And then before he lost his own appeal bid in 2019, he asked the Commission again to refer his case in 2021. And they then found that DNA samples did not match him. But I feel the same way about the Lucy Letby case. I'm pretty sure, on the evidence that was presented to the jury in 2 different cases, that she did murder 7 babies and was involved in the attempted murder of 7 others, and possibly more. There are other cases going forward. She's convicted. The juries that heard the case, certainly the one that had huge numbers of cases, they found her not guilty on a number of them. They found they couldn't come to agreement on others. It was a very long trial. They heard specific evidence. The detective investigating these cases, they were only involved in 1 case each. There's loads of evidence that was never challenged by Lucy Letby's lawyers. I was very sure about that conviction. Certainly we talked about it on air and in copy.
when the first question marks were raised about her by Peter Hitchens and David Davis and others, frankly, I'm a little bit sceptical. There have been sufficient issues now raised about the evidence. I think there's, beyond doubt, there should be some sort of review of the process.
Yeah.
But I don't mean necessarily that there'll be a different outcome, but surely we need to be sure that this young woman is guilty.
And I agree with you. I was pretty convinced at the beginning that the process had been correct and she was jailed for the crime she was guilty of. But
I think if she wasn't a young, attractive blonde woman, there's lots of these people wouldn't be interested. I'm thinking. So, no, I'm serious.
Highly cynical,
some cases are more, celebrity fired.
Yes. No, I do.
There's a word there somewhere.
Yes, she has turned into that kind of cool celeb, which
that's it.
See, I can come up with words occasionally.
Thanks, better than.
But I do worry that we spend so much time deciding whether or not to look into it that we are going to be in another case, as in with Peter Sullivan, 10 years later, we might find that she was in a similar position. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, but if we don't know, then exactly, if enough questions been raised about some of the evidence given by consultants, one of the bits of evidence was she was, the consultant walks in, she was just standing by the baby monitor, she hadn't called for help, when actually wrote an email that's now been discovered before that saying that she had called for help. Well, that's a bit of a game changer in that case, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's one I would rule out. So, but again, how awful for the parents.
Yeah.
Any of the parents involved in this, it's bad enough that you've lost a child. To have your case being discussed like this is just appalling. It must just be terrible. I do want to talk about assisted dying. Scottish MPs voted yesterday, MSPs voted yesterday, to the first stage of allowing assisted dying in Scotland. We've got on Friday the assisted dying bill coming back to the Commons for a vote. This is the one that Kim Leadbeater has brought in. There have been huge changes to that bill since MPs gave it support to go to the committee stage, crucially taking out the requirement to have a judge, a High Court judge, sit on the case. Now, there were practicalities involved in that. There weren't enough High Court judges. Basically, you would clog up the courts for years. Basically, for all intents and purposes, people who've got 6 months to live will be long dead by the time any of their cases came to court and a High Court judge could look into it. There needs to be a practical way to do it. Now, I'm very much in principle in favour of assisted dying. I would like it for myself, for my family. Some members more than others, and I know a lot of people who feel that way. A lot of doctors in particular feel that way. We've had like the British Medical Association. They're now they're down in two minds. British Psychiatric Association. They're saying they're opposed to this bill. Mind you, they also think that trans women are women and that you should give puberty blockers to kids. So I'm not sure we trust them on many issues. Frankly, I mean, I'm sorry, that does rather undermine them. But a lot of MPs being really concerned that actually this bill is now unrecognisable. Yeah. As someone who has for years supported an assisted dying law, I would not support this law as it stands. Do you think it may well go through though?
No, I don't. I think that it is so fundamentally different to the bill that was presented to MPs that a lot of people are in the similar position. Whichever side of the fence that they came into the debate on, most people are now going, hang on a second. The safeguards aren't there. The safeguards aren't there. You've got the Royal College of Psychiatrists, they have their own issues, but they're pulling their support for it. And you just see it fading away, the support. And I think that Kim Leadbeater has done herself no favours by trying to browbeat MPs into supporting it. Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of the stories we're talking about. 0344 499 1000. We'll get your messages and your calls coming up in just a few moments. You can text the word talk and your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at Talk TV.